Working a cursed night shift in Calgary, 7 sinister rules for survival revealed by my supervisor. Jessie shivered as she stepped into the dimly lit convenience store, the flickering neon sign casting shadows that danced sinisterly on the walls. Her breath hitched at the thought of what she had just agreed to: a night shift at a rundown convenience store, steeped in ghostly lore and a chilling history of missing persons. She was already late, bills piled up in her kitchen, and her kids needed the warmth of the little money this job could offer. Mr. Hawthorne, her mysterious supervisor, extended a skeletal hand and pressed a crumpled piece of paper into her palm. The word 7 sinister rules for survival felt like a warning more than advice. "Follow these," he murmured, his voice as cold as the biting Calgary night. She nodded, her desperation blurring logic. Rule 3: Never trust a customer after 2 a.m. echoed in her mind as she glanced around the aisles, their chill sinking into her bones. Hours passed like molasses. The store felt wrong, the air thick with tension. Whispers caressed her ears, and shadows lurked just beyond her line of sight. When the clock struck midnight, a low rumble of sounds emerged from the back rooms. Jessie, clutching a cup of coffee that had long gone cold, felt her heart hammering against her ribs. Rule 6: If the lights flicker, it's time to leave. Jessie's eyes darted to the buzzing overhead lights, which flickered ominously. But she couldn't leave. Not with bills to pay and 2 kids asleep at home, trusting her to make ends meet. Yet, dread coiled in her stomach like a serpent. She fought against the heaviness in her chest, trying to shake the feeling of loneliness creeping through her. Suddenly, the bell chimed, announcing a new customer. Dread pooled in her stomach as the door swung open. There stood Ted, her neighbor, with a wide, unsettling grin that stretched across his face. He waved, but an unspeakable chill skittered down her spine, reminding her of Rule 1, say nothing beyond what's necessary. Her insides twisted as she managed a tight smile, avoiding his penetrating gaze. Then, the front door rattled violently as if something sinister were trying to break in. Jessie jumped, backing against the register, heart thudding. Outside, a blanket of thick mist rolled in, swallowing the world beyond the store. Panic seized her as Rule 7 slithered into her thoughts: trust no one. Ted's face took on an unearthly pallor as he continued to peer inside, a flicker of fear darting in his once friendly eyes. Her mind raced, connecting eerie whispers that echoed in the shadows. This neighborhood held dark secrets. Expired milk, strange disappearances. Could they all be tied to this convenience store? The weight of her children's well-being grounded her to the spot. A low growl emanated from the stockroom, a vile sound that scraped against the walls of her sanity. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The growling grew louder, an insistent pounding at the core of her fears. In that moment, all the pieces clicked into place. Jessie realized these rules weren't just superstitions. They were her lifeline in this web of terror spun tight around her. But could she trust them to keep her and her children safe when danger lurked around every corner? The clock ticked ominously, each second pulling tighter on her chest as she braced for whatever horror came next. Would the truth reveal itself before it was too late? The growling morphed into a chorus of disordered sounds, a mix of snorts and whispers that coiled around Jessie like a tightening noose. She steadied herself against the counter, every nerve ending screaming with each thud and scrape coming from the stockroom. Stay calm, she whispered to herself. It's just the pipes acting up. But deep down, she could feel the truth gnawing at her sanity, pushing her close to a breaking point. Mr. Hawthorne's warnings echoed in her mind, each one a chilling reminder of the darkness surrounding her. Ted pressed his face closer to the glass, his expression twisted into something unrecognizable. Let me in, Jessie. You shouldn't be here alone. His voice, once familiar and comforting, now dripped with a sharpness that made her stomach turn. Fear clenched at her throat. "No. No," she mumbled, stepping back. The store felt smaller, the shadows creeping closer, pressing in on her. Panic surged as she glanced at the large windows showing nothing but that thick, engulfing mist. The world outside felt alien, dangerous. Before some part of her still wondered if it was real at all. Rule 2 flashed painfully in her mind: keep eyes on the door. You won't have a second chance. But when she turned back, a cold sweat soaked her neck. Ted was already gone. The growling escalated, morphing into guttural sounds, and Jessie fought the instinct to run. Her pulse raced as she felt the air change, weighty and electric, as if the very atmosphere was aware of her dread. "Just breathe," she muttered, gripping the counter, her fingers digging into the chipped faux wood. She had to remember why she was here: the bills, her kids. The reasons forged a steel resolve that settled somewhere deep in her. Suddenly, the lights flickered again, a stutter of power that cast her in shadow. Jessie's heart plummeted, the words of Rule 6 echoing in her mind. Panic bubbled up as she looked toward the stockroom, where the noise had grown more pronounced, now resembling the sound of something scraping against the floor. Adrenaline coursed through her as the haze in the room thickened, the air suffocating. The following moment exploded in a cacophony as a box toppled over, crashing to the ground with an ungodly clatter. Jessie's breath hitched. The sound was too close. Instinct told her to escape, but Rule 5 echoed: never leave the register unattended. What good would it do to run? She had nowhere to go in this hellish store. Just then, a figure slithered into view, faint under the dim light, but unmistakably human. Jessie gasped, holding her breath as the figure glided across the floor, pouring out of the shadows like smoke. It wasn't Ted. This was something different, something wrong. Jessie's instincts kicked in, propelling her to grab the nearest object, a sturdy bottle of soda, and she held it aloft as if it were a weapon. "Stay away!" she shouted, her voice cracking. The figure paused, tilting its head, the mist swirling around it like a veil obscuring its features. Then, a desperate thought slid into her chaotic mind: what if this wasn't a customer? The growling continued to rise, deeper and more guttural, as the figure advanced. Was it something from the tales of missing persons? Did they come for her? A fleeting vision of her children flashed in her mind, helpless and waiting. With her heart pounding, Jessie glanced at the clock. 1:47 a.m. Time was running out. The rules flashed behind her eyes, a swirl of desperate wisdom. She needed to confront whatever nightmare was hunting her. "Whatever you are, I want to let you take me," she shouted, voice shaking but firm. But then it spoke back, a voice that was familiar yet distorted, dripping with malice. "You think you can survive the night shift?" The room fell silent. The growling ceased as the figure stepped closer, a grotesque smile breaking across its shadowed face, revealing teeth sharper than she'd imagined. Jessie's stomach churned as she braced herself for whatever horror awaited her, knowing she had to unravel this mystery before it consumed her. What truth did the haunted history of this place hold? And how many had already died trying to uncover it? The sound of clock ticking mixed with her escalating breath. The answer loomed just beyond reach. The figure loomed closer, its laughter echoing through the darkness like broken glass. Jessie's grip tightened on the soda bottle, knuckles white against the label. This was no ordinary intruder. Its presence felt like the embodiment of every nightmare she had ever fought to escape. "Surviving? You think you can just walk out?" The voice snickered, low and guttural, sending icy tendrils creeping down her spine. "You're already part of the shift now, Jessie. There's no escape." Panic surged through her veins, and her heart hammered against her ribcage like a frantic prisoner. She darted her eyes toward the front door, the only exit. The mist pressed against the glass, thicker now, almost pulsing like a living creature. She could feel it want to swallow her whole. With a sudden rush of adrenaline, Jessie lunged toward the door, ready to bolt. But the moment she turned, the figure's shadow extended, clawing at her. The cold grip of fear struck her chest. she couldn't fight what she couldn't fully see. "Don't run." It hissed, and something instinctual stopped her in her tracks. "You're not the first to be trapped here, and you won't be the last." Jessie shook her head frantically, forcing breath into her lungs. The screams of previous victims seemed to echo in her mind, swirling around her like ghosts in a graveyard. "Get away from me!" she yelled, voice quaking. Her stance wavered, but she could feel the ground beneath her, solid and unwavering, even as the shadows danced around her. "I know your fears, Jessie," it whispered, an agonizing familiarity wrapping around its words. "I see your children, waiting anxiously for you. Why not join them forever?" Each word felt like a dagger, plunging into her heart. Jessie felt the heat of tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but she was determined to stand firm. "No. You're lying. My kids are safe," she shouted, voice breaking, but defiance fueling her. The creature laughed once more, the sound sharp and full of malice, reverberating against the walls of the store. "How would you know? You've been here long enough to forget what safe even feels like." It moved closer, the laugh rippling through Jessie's mind, clamping down on her will. She had to fight back, retreat was not an option. But the shadows felt alive, twisting and turning, trying to grasp her like icy fingers around her ankles. The air thickened, brewing a palpable dread that threatened to suffocate her. With a primal yell, Jessie swung the soda bottle with all her might, determined to shatter whatever horror this was, but it passed through the figure as if it were smoke. She stumbled back, heart racing, breath coming in desperate gasps. "Did you forget Rule 3? It taunted, its eyes narrowing into slits. "You can't break what isn't real." Real. Jessie felt the world teeter around her. What if none of this was real? A surge of terror ignited her instincts. She had to escape, had to find a way to wake up from this nightmare. In that fleeting moment, hope flared within, igniting a flicker of bravado. Maybe she could fight it, maybe she could uncover the truth. The clock ticked mercilessly behind her, and she was running out of time. Desperate, Jessie turned back toward the stockroom. Whatever lurked inside had to hold answers. The growling began once more, louder, more insistent. She staggered, caught between terror and determination. And then, a sudden movement in the shadows spun her fears into overdrive. Something darker was waiting, something worse than the voice. She could feel it coiling, ready to strike. "Face your truth, Jessie, or be consumed by it." She steeled herself, focusing on survival. What horrors lay ahead? Would they free her or pull her deeper into this abyss? The decision hung in the air like a storm. Determined, Jessie stepped into the darkness of the stockroom, heart racing. What unspeakable truths awaited her within? And as she crossed the threshold, the air crackled with an electric chaos, bending the very fabric of the night around her. The stockroom swallowed her whole, darkness wrapping around Jessie like a suffocating cloak. Boxes loomed in silhouettes, casting ominous shapes that seemed to shift as her eyes adjusted. There was no denying the stench of decay, a foul odor that clawed at her throat. Her pulse raced, each beat echoing in her ears like a war drum urging her forward, heart pounding. Jessie took one hesitant step, then another. The growling morphed into a low, guttural murmur, resonating off the walls, making her skin prickle. Shadows danced in her peripheral vision, teasing her sanity. They beckoned like old friends, dark and twisted, promising her release from this torment. "Answers," she whispered, barely hearing her own voice amidst the din. "I need answers." A soft rustle from a cardboard box pulled her attention. She edged closer, breath hitching in her throat. Something someone could be hiding amidst the clutter. Jessie bent down, her fingers trembling as she lifted the flaps. Blackened fingers slithered out, grasping at her wrist. Jessie recoiled, heart racing. A mummified face emerged, pupils wide with terror, its mouth opening in a silent scream. It felt uncomfortably familiar. The vision sent shockwaves through Jessie. It looked like her neighbor, the woman who always watered her plants when she was gone. Get out. The figure mouthed, words drowned in despair. But then the shadows closed in again, choking the screams of the damned. Jessie wheeled around, already knowing she couldn't linger. The creature might return, drawn by her fear. Are you here to reclaim me? A voice echoed from the depths of the stockroom. It sounded like the creature, yet softer, almost pleading. Jessie's instincts screamed to flee, but curiosity anchored her feet. What was this? A chance to learn? Who are you? She shouted into the void, voice splintering. The haze shifted, revealing fragmented images, snippets of people barely held together by shadow. They were all victims, whispers of past lives hovering near her. Family faces, friends' fates entangled with hers, all staring at her with haunting eyes, trapped in some spectral limbo. Join us, Jessie, they murmured, sibilant voices wrapping around her, a siren-esque lullaby dripping with dread. You can't undo this, you've become part of the shift. Jessie pressed her palms against her ears, trying to block out the noise. Battling the urge to scream, she stumbled back, only to find the doorway had vanished behind a mountain of grotesque, writhing shadows. The air thickened, woven with despair, breath snagging in her throat. No. I want to be pulled into your darkness. Suddenly, a figure stepped forward, a woman draped in layers of black rags, her eyes a piercing void. You must remember, she rasped, voice fractured. The rules you've ignored. The truth that binds us. As Jessie recoiled, she felt something cold clench around her leg. Looking down, it was a shadowy tendril, slithering up her body, squeezing tight. The dread pooled in her stomach, a torrent of fear cascading over her. What truth? Jessie gasped. What rules? The woman pointed toward the back of the stockroom, where a dim light flickered like a distant star. The exit, but you'll have to face Rule 1 or become another lost soul. Jessie hesitated, glancing at the faces around her, a haunting gallery of mournful expressions. Could she really confront whatever lay ahead? With a flash of hurried resolve, she dashed toward the light. Each step seemed to awaken more shadows, screeches of anguish wailing all around her. Behind her, the growl grew louder, a chorus of desperation chasing her down. Don't turn back, Jessie. The final truth awaits. What lay ahead remained shrouded in darkness, but she knew one thing: the path would not be easy, and it was lined with loss. As she reached for the light, a blinding flash erupted, and everything fell silent. The air throbbed with anticipation, pregnant with secrets. One question hung above her, a specter in her mind: was she ready to uncover the truth, or would the shadows claim her as their own? Just behind her, the echoing laughter surged anew, a plea and a warning all wrapped into one chilling sound, urging her to discover what waited beyond. Light exploded around Jessie, enveloping her in a scorching brightness that threatened to pierce her very soul. She blinked, disoriented, as the shadows receded like smoke in a breeze. The stockroom shifted around her, the oppressive atmosphere releasing its hold. But Jessie knew better than to embrace the illusion of safety. Something lingered just out of sight. In front of her stood a new arrangement of boxes, forming a crude path deeper into the room. Each box seemed to whisper secrets of the past, their surfaces marred and stained. She felt the urge to turn back, but the oppressive weight of those sorrowful faces from before pushed her forward. She couldn't revert now, not when answers were within reach. Taking a deep breath, Jessie put one foot in front of the other, her pulse thundering in her ears. The dim light grew brighter as she neared the end of the path, revealing words scrawled on the wall in a frenzied hand. Rule 1, Fear is your only ally, it read, dripped in a viscous substance that shimmered ominously in the light. Just then, the ground trembled beneath her feet and Jessie lost her balance, crashing into the cardboard boxes. The moment she fell, the stockroom roared to life. Growls morphed into screams, a pitch so high and grating it felt like glass scraping against her mind. Panic surged through her as the shadows swarmed, merging into a grotesque shape that squeezed the air from her lungs. With a surge of adrenaline, she pushed herself upright and stumbled toward the flickering light that now beckoned from a corner. As she raced forward, the shadows clawed at her legs, mournful whispers seeping into her thoughts. Embrace the fear, for it knows the way. Jessie squeezed her eyes shut, refusing to submit. A piercing agony shot through her leg as a tendril latched on, drawing her back. She screamed, her voice drowned by the cacophony. It was a fight she couldn't afford to lose. Rule 2, only those who face the darkness can escape. Bellowed the woman in rags, suddenly appearing before her, fury etched into her features. The figure pointed, but it was too late. Jessie felt herself being pulled down, the shadows wrapping around her like living chains, dragging her away from the light. "No! I want to let you take me!" she shouted, clawing at the floor, desperation fueling every ounce of strength she had left. In that moment of struggle, a flash of recognition ignited in her mind. She recalled the face of the neighbor, the silent scream that had urged her to escape. "Find the key," the woman had said before vanishing into the blackness. But what key? Suddenly, Jessie noticed a glimmer beneath a pile of boxes. Mustering every bit of willpower, she drove her nails into the cardboard, ripping it open with one fierce motion. From the rubble emerged a rusty key, glinting like a star against the oppressive gloom. "Courage!" the woman's voice urged her from the depths. Rule 3, the key to the soul always shines in darkest times. Jessie's heart raced as she seized the key. She hesitated only for a moment, casting a glance behind her at the dark figure that loomed ever closer. Each second stretched unbearably. She had to make a choice. With the glimmer of hope in her hand, she ran toward the light again, adrenaline surging like fire through her veins. The key felt heavy, almost alive, pulsing with energy. Would it guide her to safety, or was it another cruel trick of the shadows? As she reached the mouth of the light, a low growl vibrated through the air, and the tendrils wrapped tighter than ever. Jessie pressed the key against the light, feeling it sink deep into the soft glow, and gasped as a thin blade of fear sliced into reality itself. The moment felt pivotal, the air thickening around her, tightening like a noose. What trapped horrors awaited her beyond the light? There was no choice left but to step into the unknown. In that instant, the world shifted around her, collapsing into chaos and echoing laughter. "Don't forget, Jessie. Every key has its door." And before she could exhale, the chaos closed in, the light wavering, and Jessie found herself consumed by the dark laughter. The final question burning in her mind: would the key unlock freedom, or unleash her worst nightmare? The darkness swallowed her whole. Suddenly, Jessie stood in a narrow alley, the air thick and suffocating. A pale moon cast a cold light over the cracked pavement, but it was the shadows that danced at the periphery that held her gaze. She was no longer in the stockroom, yet she could feel the pulse of that terrifying place still thrumming in her veins, heart pounding. She glanced around, trying to find something familiar. The smell of damp concrete mixed with something else, a metallic tang that made nausea coil in her stomach. Nothing felt solid. Panic clawed at the edges of her sanity. Rule 4, fear lets you see the hidden, echoed the woman's voice. With it came a surge of determination. Jessie had to find the key's purpose. But what did it unlock? She had to focus. She couldn't let fear win. Stumbling forward, she followed the light that flickered at the alley's end. Each step felt like a battle, with unseen hands tugging at her feet as shadows whispered her name, pulling her back into despair. The alley narrowed, threatening to close in on her, but the light gleamed like a beacon of hope. When Jessie reached the light, it revealed a door, its surface worn but inviting. She raised her hand, trembling, and pressed the rusty key into the lock. The metal felt hot against her palm, heat radiating as she twisted it. A low groan echoed from within the door, like the prelude to a calamity. She hesitated. What lay beyond? Memories flooded her mind, every terrible thing she'd tried to escape. But there was no turning back. She pushed the door open with a deep breath. Inside, the air shifted, heavy with unspoken words. An expansive room stretched out before her, cluttered with strange, twisted artifacts, a blend of the mundane and the macabre. A desk stood in the middle, papers strewn about like fallen leaves, their texts flickering with warnings. Rule 5, knowledge is power, but knowledge breeds fear. Jessie's fingers brushed across the papers, the words felt alive, pulsating as if they were about to leap off the page. The shadows began to gather behind her again, a sinister reminder that she wasn't alone. As her eyes scanned the clutter, she stumbled upon an open book, the pages flicked by an unseen wind, revealing a drawing that made her stomach churn. It depicted a figure, the woman in rags, standing in front of a mirror. Each reflection showed her twisted forms, shifting into monstrous visages. Below the illustration was scribbled in frantic ink, "Face the reflection. Only then will you see what you truly fear." "What is this?" Jessie whispered, the realization creeping up her spine like a spider. Suddenly, the walls began to flicker, warped like a faulty television screen. A cry erupted from deep within the shadows, echoing back at her, a cacophony of despair and hopelessness. It morphed into laughter, a twisted, knowing laughter that seeped into her bones. Rule 6, the mirror reflects what you deny. Jessie turned sharply to face the mirror that had appeared on the wall opposite her. It was ornate, standing tall as if it had been waiting for her. As the shadows closed in, wrapped in greed and thirst for her fear, she found herself moving toward the glass, the urge irresistible. "Face it. Face yourself." A voice shouted from the void, pushing her forward. With trembling hands, Jessie reached out. The surface felt ice-cold against her fingertips. She steeled herself, staring into the glass. What would she see? Would it be the fear she had run from all her life, or something darker, something that had always lingered deep within her? As her reflection began to swirl and shift, Jessie's breath hitched. The room trembled with energy, shadows swirling, reaching for her. The laughter grew louder, drowning out her thoughts. Just then, she noticed something glinting from the corner of the mirror. A figure, an echo of herself, but with eyes full of rage and despair. Rule 7, sometimes the greatest horror comes from within. And as the shadows coiled around her, Jessie had to wonder, could a reflection reveal a path to salvation, or would it plunge her deeper into the darkness? Jessie's heart raced as she gazed into the mirror, her own image twisting but retaining an underlying familiarity that gnawed at her core. The eyes staring back felt foreign, yet intimately linked to a fear she could never quite grasp. The laughter echoed still, a cacophony that rattled her senses, drowning her in a tide of dread. "Face it." The voice boomed through the shadows, a command laced with authority and disdain. Jessie wavered, caught between wanting to turn away and an inexplicable need to confront whatever was lurking in that glass prison. As she focused, the distorted figure began to morph. Frenzied faces materialized around her own, each one a reflection of lost hope. The anger, grief, and regret etched into their features shouted accusations that hit like daggers. It was her past laid bare, broken promises, abandoned dreams, and moments of weakness slipping through her fingers like sand. The shadows pressed closer, suffocating her, their whispers coaxing her into insanity. "You cannot hide," they taunted. "She sees you." "Shut up!" Jessie screamed, her voice cracking. The anger surged, twisting with fear, and fueled her as she stared deeper into the mirror. She felt sick, yet a spark surged within her. What if she could wrest control away from this cursed reflection? What if confronting it meant reclaiming her power? Rule 8, anger can be a tool, if you wield it correctly. The voice of her tormentor croaked, seeping through the shadows like poison. Taking a shaky breath, she roared back at her reflection. "I am not afraid of you. I am not your prisoner." The room shook, shadows retreating momentarily, surprised by her ferocity. The figure laughed, a chilling sound, but Jessie pushed forward. "You don't own me." With newfound ferocity, she lunged forward, hands gripping the cold edges of the mirror. Reality warped. Time twisted as the glass popped, crackling like ice under the weight of her fury. With one powerful thrust, she sought to shatter the illusion and expose the truth buried beneath, but instead, her hands pulled back as a cold jolt shot through her. The glass pulled her, sucking at her very essence. A blinding light erupted, and she felt herself being ripped apart, each fragment of her soul fighting to break free, then silence. When Jessie opened her eyes again, the room shifted. She now stood at the threshold of a hauntingly familiar hallway. The air was thick but empty, a hollow echo of something lost. Ahead, doors loomed, each painted a stark gray, devoid of any markings. It was as if they were waiting for her to make a choice, but a sense of dread wrapped around her throat like a noose. Which door? She murmured to herself, hands clammy against her sides. Behind her, the mirror dulled, reflecting nothing but darkness. The shadows had receded, but their whispers lingered in the corners of her mind, taunts and truths intermingled, daring her to retreat into safety or plunge deeper into whatever this malevolent realm held. Jessie's gut twisted. Each door felt like a decision that could tear her apart or set her free. But as she approached them, a familiar pulse began to thrum beneath her feet, a rhythm that mirrored her heartbeat, pulling her toward a single door on the far end of the hall. Rule 9: Choose wisely, for not all doors lead to escape. With a sharp intake of breath, she stepped forward. The handle gleamed, teasing her like a siren call. Would this lead her back, or was it another trap set by unseen forces? And as she grasped the handle, the temperature dropped, the very air thickening, ready to strangle her hope. What awaited her behind the door? Was there a way out, or was she only sealing her fate further into despair? The door swung open with a reluctant creak, filling the hallway with an eerie wail. Jessie stepped inside, her heart pounding as she crossed the threshold. The room was shrouded in darkness, but an unsettling glow emanated from the corners, illuminating twisted shadows that danced like specters. She squinted into the dim light, eyes darting for anything that might give her a clue about her next move. Walls seemed alive, with cracks snaking up like fingers reaching out for her. The air was dense, heavy with a suffocating silence that left her gasping. A chilling breath crept up her spine, and she spun around, expecting the shadows to pounce. Instead, there was just the door slowly swinging closed behind her, locking her in like a trap. What is this place? She whispered, the question echoing through the void, answering her with a cacophony of whispers from unseen mouths. The sensation prickled at the back of her neck. She was not alone. In the center of the room stood a lone figure, a silhouette blurred by the smothering darkness. Jessie squinted hard, trying to discern its features. It stood still, lurking, watching her every move. As panic knotted her stomach, the figure stepped forward, revealing the familiar face of her tormentor, a twisted version of her own. "Welcome, Jessie," it sneered, voice smooth yet dripping with malice. "I've been waiting. Ready to learn a few more rules? What do you want from me?" Jessie stammered, fear creeping into her words. She clawed at the rational part of her mind, trying to cling to escape routes, trying to suppress the dread curling tightly around her chest. "Oh, it's simple," it said, inching closer. "I want you to understand that each choice comes with a price. And in this realm, you'll pay dearly." The last word dripped with venom, sending shivers racing down her spine. Rule 10: Fear feeds this place. Embrace it, and it will consume you. It grinned, revealing rows of jagged teeth that glistened in the ghostly light. But resist, and you just might find a way out. Jessie shook her head, barely keeping herself together. "I'd rather break free," she rasped, confidence wavering like a candle in a storm. "Not everyone has the will," it taunted, stepping back into the shadows. "Can you kill the part of you that shines too bright? Can you dull your anger to escape, or will that anger ignite the darkness?" The room began to tremble, distorted walls vibrating with the weight of her growing anxiety. A sickening hunger clawed at her, an instinct to run, to hide. But as the weight of its predictions loomed, Jessie felt a flicker of determination rise within her. "What if I don't play your game?" She shot back, voice trembling with defiance. The figure grinned, a sinister twist of delight on its face. "Then you will lose everything you hold dear. Darkness has its way of finding what you fear most." In that moment, Countless faces flickered to life within the shadows, strangers, friends, all people she had loved and lost somehow. Their voices echoed in her mind, a desperate chorus pleading for release. Jessie's heart plummeted. Were they trapped here because of her choices? Because of her anger? No. She shouted, fists balling at her sides. You will not take them from me. Suddenly, the room erupted in chaos, light flickering as if warring against the darkness. Shadows lunged at her, clawing at her skin, wrapping her in chains of dread. Jessie felt the familiar pull, as the tormentor's laughter echoed in her ears, taunts mixed with promises of what could no longer be held. In a bold surge of rage, she fought against the shadows wrapping around her, praying for clarity. She needed to focus. The rules began swimming through her mind, one truth emerging clear: Rule 11, you decide what guides you, fear or hope. With every ounce of strength, she closed her eyes, centering her thoughts. The shadows paused, their hold loosening. Maybe, just maybe, she could turn this back against them, but the laughter grew louder, it grew thicker. The door behind her rattled, and she realized, escape might come with another heavy price. What would she have to lose to reclaim the light? Jessie's heart thundered in her chest, each pulse matching the relentless banging of the door behind her. She could feel the anticipation building in the air, the weight of every dark whisper pressing against her skin like a suffocating blanket. The shadows seemed to swirl, alive with malevolence and hungry for her fear. Then, as if the room itself was alive, the ghostly glow flickered dangerously, casting monstrous shapes that couldn't be ignored. The laughter faded momentarily, leaving an eerie silence that made Jessie's skin crawl. She opened her eyes, only to find her tormentor standing nearer, a grin wide and expectant on its face. Embracing fear, are we? It crooned, a mocking tone lacing its words. You still believe you can outsmart me? Jessie didn't answer. She was busy fighting the shadows tugging insistently at her mind. Images of her lost loved ones flooded her thoughts, faces, signs of laughter, unfinished conversations. They were a reminder of everything she held dear, everything that motivated her to push this darkness away. But the truth was buried within the tormentor's taunts: each choice would come at a price. Think about what matters most, it spat, its own twisted version of encouragement. What would you sacrifice to flee this prison? An ember of rebellion sparked within Jessie. I refuse to let you dictate my choices. She yelled, her voice strong despite the tremors of fear lurking beneath. You're a part of me. You're not all I am. The shadows recoiled momentarily, as if her words delivered a blow. But Jessie knew they wouldn't stay at bay for long. That moment of clarity propelled her forward, and she pushed deeper into the room, scanning for anything, an exit, a clue, anything that could aid her escape. Then she saw it, a series of marks etched into the floor by the door, almost invisible to the untrained eye. They hinted at a path, an escape route crafted from desperation. As she stepped closer, the shadows shrieked, lunging at her, attempting to pull her back. Jessie fought against them, digging her heels into the ground, every part of her screaming to let go, to give in. No! She shouted, a primal instinct surging through her. She remembered the faces, the sounds of laughter now turned to echoes of despair. I will not be a prisoner of my own fears. With those words, she pressed her foot down onto the marks, feeling a strange energy ripple up her leg. The room shuddered, and the torturous laughter faltered, uncertainty creeping into the shadows surrounding her. Rule 12, strength lies in challenge, she muttered, her voice steadying, the shadows around her flaring in response. She was no longer just reacting, she was fighting back, defying the very essence of what sought to engulf her. As the shadows screeched in suspicion, Jessie waved her arms, harnessing the sense of empowerment sparking within her. In that electrifying moment, she realized that every ounce of fear could be an ally if wielded correctly, a catalyst for courage. But before she could take full advantage, the walls throbbed violently, sending her spiraling back. Pins and needles danced across her skin as a sudden fear clawed at her insides. A chilling whisper slipped through the chaos, cold and dark. You'll need more than just will to escape, Jessie. In horror, her turmoil shifted toward a new revelation. The figures from the shadows were morphing faces of loved ones twisting in anguish, begging for release. They were pleading now, not just for their own freedom, but for Jessie to understand the cost of her choice. What have you done? Jessie gasped, her breath hitching as it dawned on her. They were linked to her psyche, manifestations of her regret and sorrow, each a regret tethered to her past decisions. The shadows swarmed around her, and her heart raced. What do you know of sacrifice? She whispered, dread pooling like cold water in her gut. Suddenly, the tormentor stepped back, eyes gleaming. Ah, but you're beginning to understand. The most treasured memories always come with the heaviest toll. The ground shook beneath her, and the door behind buzzed ominously. Jessie took a shuddering breath, knowing this was just the beginning of her dark journey. Though still unsure of the path ahead, she understood one undeniable truth: choice was both her deliverance and her curse. With renewed urgency, she steeled herself for the next challenge. One question surfaced, clear and sharp: what if the next choice would cost her more than she had to give? Jessie stood in the oppressive darkness, her heart racing, facing an impending challenge. The shadows loomed, threatening to wrap around her like chains. She had to confront this reality and, ultimately, herself. The echoes of her tormentor's voice lingered, each word planted in her mind like a hook. You need more than will, Jessie. In that moment, she remembered her children, the reason she was fighting, the spark that ignited her will to survive. Focusing on them, she found strength. A warmth flooded her chest, pushing back the chill of despair. Fear can guide you, the figure in the shadows hissed, a taunt woven from despair. But is it enough to wield? Jessie shook her head, trembling but firm. I won't be controlled by you or my fear anymore. The determination in her voice shocked even her. She took a step forward, ignoring the haunted faces swirling in the darkness, and called back the memories of laughter, joy, and love. I know my truth, she shouted into the void. And I embrace it. I'll face any darkness to protect what matters most. With newfound clarity, she began navigating the twisted shapes that threatened to consume her. Each step felt heavy, yet invigorating, as Jessie pushed away the weight of regret with every decisive movement. Thought you could escape? Her tormentor jeered mockingly, but Jessie couldn't be deterred. She halted before a door that pulsed with faint light at the end of the hall. Jessie reached out toward its handle, knowing what lay beyond might unravel her heart all over again. But she couldn't hesitate this time. There was no room for doubt. Each moment felt heavy with consequence. Courage surged again within her as she twisted the handle, flinging the door open. Light cascaded into the hallway, momentarily illuminating the swirling shadows. She shielded her eyes and tried to step forward, scrunching her face against the brightness. Inside, the room was serene, each element vibrating with quiet energy. It felt familiar yet surreal, like a subconscious landscape woven from her dreams. The air breezed lightly around her, whispering soft promises of hope and warmth. And in that calm, she glimpsed a mirror, reflecting her true self, but instead of a twisted version of her, it revealed a vibrant woman, colored in light and strength. Jessie's breath caught in her throat. Suddenly, the swirling shadows crashed against the door, rattling it violently. She could hear their desperate cries, clawing at her will. They were not her enemies, they were reflections of her past fears and unresolved pain. What will you choose? The tormentor's voice reverberated through the cracks. Embrace fear, or be consumed. But Jessie stepped up to the mirror, laying her hands on its surface. I choose to see my truth. I choose to own it. The shadows fell silent, and the mirror rippled. She could almost hear the echoes of the past urging her on. Face it. We are with you. They murmured, warmth radiating from the frame of the mirror. Your fears are just lessons, let go of their grip. You have the power. Breathing deeply, she focused, channeling every doubt she ever felt, every shadow that had engulfed her. The room shimmered, and the tormentor's laughter began to fade, replaced by a resonant empowerment. I am not the mistakes I made. I am not the fears I carry. To that mantra, Jessie felt the tether of regrets breaking, unburdened by her past. The mirror reflected her true essence, vibrant and unyielding. With a final push, Jessie stepped back and squared her shoulders, sending out a cry of defiance into the dark. I break free from you. As if in response, the walls trembled, and from within, a gate of light burst open. It framed the room in a haloed glow, a young mother emerging from the tortured past. Jessie approached it with fierce resolve, the faces of her loved ones glowing within her mind, lifting her spirit. The shadows writhed, their taunts morphing into fearful howls as she stepped towards freedom. The mirror shattered, scattering pieces of dark glass across the floor. Each shard twinkled like a star, imbued with light. And hope, a rebirth, a new beginning, emerging into the light, was not simply the end, it was a bridge towards healing. Stepping through the atmosphere of shimmering possibility, Jessie knew she had conquered this night of horrors. And then, as the dawn light broke through the horizon, Jessie found herself back in the convenience store. The neon sign glimmered lifelessly now, the darkness dissipated, the sinister rules faded along with the shadows. She was still there, on the night shift. But this time, it was different. The weight of fear had lifted, replaced by newfound wisdom. As she dusted herself off, a sense of understanding washed over her. She had faced the shadows, and they had no more power. Determined to leave behind the heavy burdens, Jessie walked out of the store as the sun rose, its first rays warming her face. She knew that her journey was far from over, but she had the strength to face whatever would come next, and as she made her way home, she smiled through tears, the promise of a brighter tomorrow lighting her path. She had fought fiercely, had chosen hope against despair, and prevailed. Now was the time for healing, for embracing her truth, and for turning the page. Don't forget, this story of Jessie shows that no matter the darkness, the light is always a choice away. So subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, your support matters. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about Jessie's journey. And please, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need this conclusion. This is your moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second.